Hello, Applied 30. Hope you're keeping well. I just wanted to congratulate you on making it approximately a month through remote learning, that's pretty awesome. If you're still sticking with this on a regular basis, that's really hard to do. That's pretty much university level. So I'm really proud of what you're doing, and I'm hoping you're able to keep that up. With our statistics unit, we only have one topic left, and that's going to be confidence intervals. So we're going to learn about that today. There's a couple of definitions that belong in this topic. But once we're done that, we'll get into some practice, some review problems, and then I'll give you some sort of assessment to work on as well. But let's start with confidence intervals. So to get started, we're going to look through a bit of a problem. I'd recommend pausing the video at some point to get this down your notes. So the problem that we're going to work with is, let's say a survey was done for 600 randomly selected people. And the survey determined that 76% of that population, which was from 18 to 34 years old, had a social networking account. So Facebook or a Twitter or an Instagram or a TikTok or whatever is going on. And then they give us a little blurb at the bottom. It says that the results were accurate within plus or minus 4 percentage points, 19 times out of 20. Now, my immediate thought when I'm looking at a question like this is I recognize that they've given us our information with a 4% here, they've given us 76% over here, and the way that my brain works, when I see a fraction, I see percentages as well. I see 19 out of 20, that's also a percentage, it's 95%. So they've essentially thrown us 3 different percentage values. How are we supposed to work with this? To work with a confidence problem, we have 3 different terms that we're going to utilize to make sense of what we're working with. One of them is called the margin of error. Margin of error is how much error there was, or how much error we could make in a set of data. And that's given to us as usually the smallest value. If you have a large margin of error, it's not a very good test. So in our example, 4 percentage points was our margin of error. So the margin of error is the amount of error in the data. And in this example, it's going to be plus or minus 4%. Don't forget that plus or minus, because that is going to be key in understanding the confidence interval. The confidence interval is when we take our result, even over here, and we combine that with our margin of error. So it's going to tell us where the true value of our data is, and it'll be within an interval that we're fairly confident it's going to be in that interval. So in this example, our true value, our confidence interval, is going to be between 76 plus or minus 4. So if we calculate that, 76 minus 4 is going to give us 72% to 76 plus 4%, 80%. And lastly, we have to look at something called a confidence level. So the margin of error is telling us the amount of error that's in the data. The confidence interval is telling us where that number is going to lie within our margin of error, so it gives us an interval. The confidence level tells us the probability of error in our experiment. In this case, our experiment is done. What is the probability that there might be an error in the way that we've conducted this research? Well, they've given us a fraction to work with. They're telling us that the probability that this survey is accurate is 19 out of 20. Which is 95%. So we're confident, 95% confident in that our data is fair. It's a good research. That also tells us, though, the inverse, which is there's a 5% chance of error. Okay, so if I just step back for a moment, there's a lot of words here that doesn't really help us with the math so much. So let's keep the same problem, but let's add a stipulation in there and use this information to solve that. So I hope you have an opportunity to pause and get this information down, because some of it's going to disappear. Okay, so the stipulation that we're going to add is, how can this result be interpreted if the population of 18 to 34-year-olds is 92,500? Now we have a number that we can work with, and we can apply that to our margin of error, confidence interval, and our confidence level. So let's do that. Let's try. So we're going to start by using some of the numbers that we know for sure. For example, we know that 76% of the people said that yes, they do have some sort of social media. So let's figure out what 76% of our 92,500 actually is. Okay, and the math yields 70,300 people said yes, they do have some sort of social media. But we have to now account for that margin of error. So we want to figure out what that confidence interval is going to be using that 4% margin of error. What did that look like? Well, we're still using the same population, but we got to figure out what 4% of that population is. Okay, so the math for that is the exact same as before. We're just going to be calculating a percentage times what our total population was. So 92,500 times 4%. Remember, when you're multiplying by percent, you have to divide your percent by 100. Hence why that extra zero is in there. So 92,500 times 4% is equal to 3,700 or 3,700 people. And the way that I would state this is 70,300 people plus or minus 3,700. Okay, so the next step would be to figure out what my confidence interval is. Well, I've already done all the hard work, I'd say. I just got to calculate what those numbers are. So 70,300 minus 3,700 will be my lower limit, plus 3,700 will be my positive or higher limit. So let's take a look and see what that looks like. Okay, so my lower limit ends up being 66,600, and my upper limit ends up being 74,000. Now, one little thing, it's not really a big deal, but whenever we list plus or minus, the plus usually goes on top, minus usually goes on the bottom. When we calculate them, I like to calculate my smallest number first. It doesn't really matter as long as when you are stating your confidence interval, you're writing your smaller number first, your bigger number second. It ends up looking like this. All right, so our last step now is to figure out how confident we are in that confidence interval. Well, this is a nice thing. If you have a confidence interval to you, which we do, we can just state that as a percentage. So if I was to write this out as a sentence, my answer would look like this. With 95% confidence, between 66,600 and 74,000 people, age 18 to 34, have a social media account in a population of 92,500. And that's how we work with confidence intervals. And that concludes our last lesson in the statistics unit. So I'll see you again for a bit more practice before we do final assessment for this unit. So you can expect some practice after this little bit. That'll be your unit review. So that's in your textbook. If you want to work ahead, you're more than welcome to do some of the problems there. Typically assign the ones that I've tried so that if you need a hand, I can help you out with those. So I'll post that up as soon as I've had a chance to go through some of those. If you have any questions, you know the drill, just give me a shout and we'll take a look-see and see how things are going. All right, keep staying safe. We'll see you in the next one.